I've given two clubs in non-league England huge upgrades. At Boston United, who have already got a wealthy owner, I've given them an even richer one with $1 billion in the bank and a massive transfer budget. However, at Carlisle, I haven't touched their finances, but what I have given them is the perfect youth facilities, coaching, and recruitment. So in theory, this is a money versus youth experiment from non-league, and we're going to run this for 25 years. And what I'm most intrigued with about this experiment is who is going to be the early front runner in terms of success, which one is going to help them climb the league tables to begin with, and which one is going to be almost the sustainable one. Who's going to have the sustainable advantage from sort of year 15 and onwards? That's what we're going to find out today, and there's only one way to find out, so let's go. I just want to start by saying I am fully aware that Clates has done a video very similar to this idea, but before his upload, you can see I actually started this experiment 22nd of December, a few days before he actually uploaded it. I didn't know it was coming. It's just one of those things that happens on YouTube. I think we actually did the same a few weeks ago as well, when we both uploaded a video with twin Wonder Kids within 24 hours of each other. It's YouTube. Things like that happened. People always have good ideas. Just so happens we have one at the same time. All right, let's start this experiment with season number 1, and our two teams are sat in 7th and 8th. Now, Carlisle, of course, had the youngsters. We'll have a look to see whether they've recruited well or managed to recruit youth recruitment well in the first season in a sec. But let's take a look at Boston first, because they finish slightly below Carlisle in terms of points as well, and they spent 115k. Now, Joe Gray looks like the most expensive player. However, he joined in March and has only made one appearance, 94k. So not even 100 grand yet spent on one player out of their 115k. They've bought a player from Doncaster who's made 5 appearances, but a lot of their signings, there's a loan deal there, a lot of their signings are still free transfers. In the lower leagues, it's going to be difficult to spend a lot of money because there's just not any players who are available for money that would want to come to Boston, I guess. But yeah, I'm surprised. And if we're looking at the club in general, their details, they still got quite a bit of money in there. They've only spent sort of £16 million this season. I say only, it's still a lot, isn't it? But £509 million. What's going to be interesting to see what they can do with their facilities going forward, because they might upgrade their facilities with the amount of money that they got. If they're smart, they will do that. And if they're really smart, they'll improve these to match, of course, Carlisle. They just don't know they're in a race with Carlisle. Now, speaking of them, I'm very curious to see what their youth recruitment was like in season number 1. Because, of course, if they're bringing in some unbelievable players, then within a few seasons, we might see a huge advantage go to Carlisle if Boston don't recruit well. So thanks to having the in-game editor, what I can actually do is add the current and potential ability of all the players in the database in this little menu here. So we can see how well or how good the players are coming through Carlisle's Youth Academy are. And straight away, Daniel Hunter has 165 potential ability. Now, if you didn't know, the potential ability ranges from 1 to 200. 200 being the maximum potential. We're talking Lamine Yamal, Lionel Messi's type of potential. So getting one at 165 is a top Premier League player. This guy has the potential to be a top Premier League player. Maybe he doesn't have the attributes to get there. It's all about, obviously, professionalism, playing with better players, etc. Does have good determination, and as a 16-year-old, doesn't look too bad either. It'll be interesting to see how Daniel Hunter sort of progresses. There's another one here, Falconer, who's got 157. Again, a very good player. And even the 152, maybe even all the way down to sort of Ryan Williamson there, who could be first-team players for Carlisle and be exceptionally good players. Now, what Carlisle are going to want to do, obviously despite having the money right now, is utilise in the early years, get these players up to their highest current ability, and then look to sell them. Because if they sell them for high profits, they can reinvest and maybe be as rich one day as what Boston is. Now, season number 2, hilariously, both clubs are very close to each other again. This time, though, both are getting promoted. Boston are champions of the Van Rama, or in fact, the Enterprise National League, and Carlisle went up through the playoffs, but they did finish in 2nd place. So they defeated Aldershot Town 1-0 in that final. Congratulations to Carlisle. So let's look at them first. because if we're looking at obviously the players that have come through, we know that they had a good youth intake last season. You can see all of those players potentially have already been upgraded into the first team, which is what we want to see. So let's have a look at their first team, and yes, they have been. So we've even got Simon Birchall here, who's got a very high potential of 162. I don't think then that the guys that were there last season are in the first team. Maybe they're in this team, they're not. So maybe they actually sold some players, which would be a shame. I think they have, yeah. Kalen Falconer has been sold for 14k, and Daniel Hunter, which of course was the other one, I think the left midfielder, he's gone for 7,000. So they're already selling, they're already cashing in on these players, which is such a shame because they could be worth way more in the future. But they keep recruiting well, it might not matter too much. They've got some good players in their youth academy already. They've got some good players in their under-21s, and they've even got some good players in their first team who are 17 and 18 years of age. So a couple of these players have done quite well. They haven't appeared for the club yet. If we're looking at in terms of players that are appearing, there's none that have come through the youth academy yet, outside of George Blore, who's played quite a lot of games. Now, George Blore has one of the highest current abilities of 103 there in their squad. So there's no surprise there that he has come into the team and been integrated well, and he's done fantastically. In fact, he scored 8 goals playing up front for them. So if they can keep George Blore firing on all cylinders, they might be in with a player who can carry them up through the leagues. Now, Boston have won the Enterprise National League. They didn't spend that much money at all, though, 7.5k. They did spend a little bit at the end of the season there. You can see it's gone up to 130k from what it was last season. But yeah, only 7.5k, and it was only on one player, Jay Mingy, who's done well. But what they have done is bring in a lot of free transfers and loan deals. Now, that is obviously going to help them in these lower leagues because they can probably offer the wages to be able to afford to bring in amazing players like Will Dixon-Hughes, scored 19 goals. Doesn't look amazing, but for this league, he definitely is. So they're now both going up into League 2. So these early seasons is already being quite interesting to see them collide and clash and see how well both clubs are doing early doors. So finances still, they took a hit straight away. 777 million. That's gone down like 100 million. It's just whether they've been invested in the right places, stadiums, facilities. That's what we want to see going up. Just whether they're obviously doing that. I think their training facilities has gone up there to 14, youth facilities to 12. They need to keep doing that. The corporate facilities, they're at 20. What a shock that is. Okay, season number 3. Now, I'm not going to track every single season. Once they sort of steady themselves, we'll move on bigger chunks. We'll go 5 years at a time. But for the early years, I want to see who progresses faster in the early years. And Carlisle has adapted better to League 2 than Boston. Boston just managing, well, I say just managing, 10 points clear of relegation, but they were bottom 3. It's very lucky, of course, that League 2, there's only 2 teams that go back down. So they finish in 48 points, but Carlisle up in 9th. They are pushing for a playoff spot in their first season. I really thought this would be the other way around. I thought Boston, with the money, would get there sooner, and Carlisle would be struggling, waiting for these players to develop or waiting for these players to stick around long enough. But they spent 700k, and they still are not doing that well. Scott Smith, Josh Powell, so 2 big players there. Josh Powell coming in for 350k from York. Barrow, another player for Scott Smith, 200k and 140 on Taylor Moore. So they are spending big money there on a couple of these players, and obviously just not investing well, or the money hasn't gone down there though. Only 768 from 770, I think it was, something like that. So they have done quite well in terms of preserving their money this season. Doesn't look like anything else has gone up, whether they've only just started reinvesting. But yeah, they obviously haven't brought in the best of players for this season. And if we're looking at current ability, their best player, David Ozo, 117. Has he been there for a long time? No. So he's just joined. So what they are managing to do is offer players 4.2k in terms of wages, which from what I gather is quite a lot of money. We'll have a look when we have a look at Carlisle to see what they are offering in terms of wages in this early seasons in League 2. But they've done quite well. Clint Hill has managed to get them there. So they are offering for wages, the highest wage there is 3.8. So it is slightly more. Their best player is still George Blore. Amazing stuff. 124. He's now wanted. We might see George Bloor leave because he's got 1 year left on his deal. They might look to cash in. He is worth nearly £1 million. So, but he's a fantastic player. Got 13 goals this year. So George Bloor's done exceptionally well for Carlisle in his very short period of time. Linton Rogers, though, has also been getting some game time too. So there is more players coming through their youth team that you can see that is playing games of football. Mark Humphreys has just been promoted. Dan Jobe has played a few games. Sam Robinson all started playing a few games. So there's lots of players now getting first team football. Thomas Moore's been loaned out, so that's good to see that they're making the most out of it. But what about in their youth team? How are they still? I mean, here we go. So we got a player here, Ross Oram, at 171. That is an elite type of player. Could be world class depending on where the attributes go. But for a winger, if they can start bringing Ross Oram into their first team and start giving him game time early with a fairly professional personality, Carlisle could jump up a few leagues fairly quickly. Season 4 and both teams are getting promoted again at the same time. We got Carlisle getting automatic promotion, just finishing 2 points behind Burton, who are champions, and Boston going up through the playoffs, which is a great time. They went to Wembley and beat AFC Wimbledon on penalties 1-1. So let's look at the Boston team first. They spent £1.7 million. Here we go. Nearly £1 million player, and they've bought Linton Rogers from Carlisle early doors in February as well, pinching one of Carlisle's best players. We've seen him already. Oh my God, 18 years old. How amazing is he? He is phenomenal. So this is what we like to see. So if we're looking at his attributes, he's got a current ability of 124. He's signed a 3.5-year deal. So he could be Boston's best player for the next 3 years, depending on how well they keep hold of him. But he's a bit of a target forward, 6'3", looks a decent player as well. How hilarious that they're using their money to buy Carlisle's players. It does mean, though, Carlisle had £1 million, which is great. They just weren't probably allowed to spend it because they bought him on deadline day there. But another player there for 300k, 230 for Charlie Webster. So they've done well. A lot of free agents as well. They've gone up through the playoffs. But Carlisle, despite losing their best player in February, has still got themselves promoted and done really well. Now they're under 18s. There's no big players in there this summer by the looks of it. But they're probably promoting them up into the under 19s and under 21s if they're smart. So there's no good players in there. They are probably using them in this. Here we go. So, yeah, Ross Oram, we mentioned giving him game time there. He has played 28 games, but only 8 starts, got 4 goals. Bit of development in terms of how well he's done this season. Simon Birchall has played just the 6 games. He's got 162 current ability, or potential ability as well. So, a lot of these youngsters here, and if we're looking at their best current ability, it's still real player Zeppa, who has joined the club, and he looks decent. They've only just signed him, so did they spend money on him? He was a free transfer there, so he does look good though. But they've got a couple of players who are only on loan that are sort of the new gens already that are fairly decent. It isn't really until you go down to Thomas Moore, who they've managed to integrate into the team and brought him off the bench 31 times to score 8 goals, where you're looking at a player that's really come through their academy and done quite well. So haven't necessarily made the most out of the players coming through the youth recruitment, but they still managed to get themselves promoted, which is rather quite impressive, to be honest. They've also sold George Bloor. He's gone to Leicester for 600k, so they are making a lot of money and just doing well in bringing in loans, by the looks of it, because their loan signings has been fantastic. So, I mean, last season they didn't sell any players, which was fantastic. They sold, obviously, Daniel Hunter the season before that. This season's the first big hit, really, with Rogers and Bloor going. But Carlisle and Boston, both in League One. Now, we've gone 2 seasons into the future, so we are 6 seasons in, because last season, it was kind of a bit of a boring season. Boston finishing 8th place, Carlisle finishing 14th. Boston had the better time. But this season, very interesting. Carlisle have gone up as automatic promotion. Boston lost in the playoffs. So semi-final stage, they were knocked out by Millwall, who eventually went on to the final and lost to Oxford in that playoff final. So Carlisle overtaking and getting an early advantage over Boston. Again, I thought this would be the opposite. So let's have a look at the last couple of seasons for Boston. They spent £1.2 million here, but sold 2.1, and that's because Linton Rodgers, formerly of Carlisle and Boston, has moved to Nottingham Forest. However, he was loaned back this season and did score 11 goals. So they got the best out of both worlds there. You get the money of £1.6 million for selling him, but of course, you loaned him out for the rest of the season, which isn't too bad, and then you just lose him again, obviously. But they spent £1.1 million here on Luton, for a Luton player, and last season they spent 650k. Are they buying any other players from... No, not from Carlisle, but they did buy a Manchester City player on loan. Well, they didn't buy him, but they got £500,000 here for Lucas Bergstrom, which is quite a funny deal. Good goalkeeper who's still at Boston as their sort of key player, their key goalkeeper. So they've done quite well there. And last season they didn't sell anybody of note. But what about their finances then? So they are now stuck in League One. Their finances, how are they looking? They've dropped down roughly about another £100 million. So that £1 billion is starting to get closer and closer to £500 million now. But their transfer budget is closer to £250 million, quarter of a billion. So they're doing rather well. Their facilities, if we're looking at how they were, the training facilities definitely got up, as has the youth facilities as well. Corporate facilities have dropped down by 3. They might need to reinvest in that. Okay, so if we're looking at the success story of this so far, it is Carlisle. Now, will they be the first club to get to the Premier League? That's the big question. They finished in second place. Richie Wellens was their manager. What about their first team then? Ross Oram is still there. Wanted by 11 clubs. He's got 4 years left on his deal as well. He's 131 current ability with that 171 potential. He's lacking quite a lot in natural fitness, which surprised me. But yeah, he's doing all right. Then they've got Diego Butler, has he come through their youth academy as well? He has. Who looks like an okay centre-back for now at this level. So they've got a couple of players who have come through. Started integrating them into the first team. Sam Robinson is another one. So if we're looking at potential ability, Birchall is in there. So hasn't played that many games. Diego Butler, Thomas Moore was the striker we've seen previously. So they're not really playing the ones that need playing. Obviously, they don't have the advantage of knowing who's the best players like we do. But what about Carlisle in terms of their youth players? So in the under-21s, they've got a couple of players who ran about 145, 135, but they're not giving them game time just yet, keeping them in their youth academy. And what they've just had come through, so they're under-18s, not a lot of really good potential players compared to the first sort of 3 or 4 years that we had some really good ones, which is a little bit alarming. But if you're looking at their facilities, has it dropped off? Youth facilities has dropped down to 19, as has youth recruitment. Youth coaching is still at 20, so that's absolutely fine. But their finances, they've got £7.5 million in the bank, which is nice. Is that because they've sold players? Oh my God, Zeppa, who, remember, wasn't one of the players that they had come through the youth academy. They're just a player that they've managed to accumulate on a free transfer. They sold him to Wolves for how much? 16 million. That's why they've got loads of money. They also sold Kundal to Ipswich for 2.5. He was a player that came through the youth academy and looks rather good too. So Jawad Kundal does look really good. He had a potential, by the way, in case anybody is wondering, of 160. So he was one of the better players that they had in their team, which is a shame. The season before, they didn't sell anybody, so they've kept hold of a lot of players. But that's fantastic. Selling a player for £16 million, and it wasn't even one of their youth players. Amazing. And they spent quite well, obviously, because they're in the Championship. Following season, Carlisle's luck looks to have run out because they have just been relegated. They finished bottom of the Championship table there, so that's not great, unfortunately, for them, getting themselves relegated. And if we're looking at their team, it looks like they've been absolutely ransacked. We're still looking at their silly Luke. Come on. Looking at their first team, Ross Oram's still there. Oh, I wonder if he'll stick around any longer. 142 current ability. They have bought £2.3 million worth of players and still managed to keep hold of all the players that they've got, unless they're obviously leaving on free transfers. But what about, of course, if we're looking at the Championship, League One, is Boston going up? they've gone up as champions. They've done very well, 81 points. So they've managed to progress. They spent £17 million to get into the Premier League this season, into the Championship this season. Leo Simmons from Middlesbrough for 16 million. What? That is a huge amount for a right back in League Two. That's absolutely mental money to spend on a League Two player. That's... I can't believe that. So, yeah, okay. If you're going to put your bets on a club out of either of these two getting into the Premier League now, it's going to be Boston. They're in a league above, and they are spending at will. All right, the following season, Ross Oram has left Carlisle. He's been sold for £11.25 million, and Diego Butler has also gone for £5.75 million to Norwich. So Carlisle are being stripped of their players, and they only finished in League One in 18th position, which is rather concerning, to be honest, after getting relegated last season. So now if we're looking at it in terms of their money, they probably got quite a lot of finances. They got £9.25 million in the bank. But facilities-wise, they're struggling. 18 down in for youth facilities, 19 still holding on for youth recruitment. Are they bringing in the players still to sort of match their ambitions of Premier League football? The current ability in terms of the first team, they've got Sam Winshare on there of 100. Oh, he should be scoring goals. He looks unbelievable. Now, he only has a potential of 130, but I'm sure he'd be able to score quite a lot of goals, and he's wanted as well. They might end up cashing in on him. But what about recent players? Are they still bringing in players? Any good ones? Doesn't really look like it, to be honest, unless they're really just bumping them straight into the under-21s. There's a couple of players in there, under-21s, who aren't bad, or into the first team. Not really looking like they're doing much, though. But if we're looking in terms of Boston, how well they are doing, 16th place in the Championship, and they spent £51 million. 21 million was gone this guy here, Bar. They got 19 million pound on Casper Davidson. It looks like he came in February, or oh no, he did. He barely played. Spending 19 million pound and only playing 11 games. That's crazy, but he was a defensive midfielder nonetheless. But they're still in the league. They're still in the Championship for now, and they still have their advantage to get to the Premier League first. Oh, in a weird set of circumstances, Carlisle have pulled off an unbelievable comeback here. They've got themselves promoted the following season, finishing in second place on the final day. Goal difference as well, so they've done really well there. That's fantastic. Now, if we're looking at, we're still looking at the under-21s there. Let's go back to their first team. That's their under-18, so they haven't got any good players coming through. All right, first team football. They've got Thomas Moore still there, who is seeming to be like their best player. Ryan Williamson as well, who came for their youth team, is one of their best players as well. So, yeah, okay, they've got some good players that have come through their youth academy that are holding down in the league and helping them get themselves back into the Championship. Boston, though. How are Boston doing? Well, 14th place. They've dropped down. Only spent £2.3 million, but sold Leo Simmons to Leicester for £16 million. That's the right back that they spent £16 million on a few seasons before that. So a weird set of circumstances going on here in Boston. They're not really making the most out of their huge budget that they still have. They still got that. If you look at their finances, they're up to 800 million now. They gained 100 million. So they're getting reinvested back into, and they've got £186 million in the bank, just not really making the most out of it right now. So this is season number 10. We're at 2035, the first season where they're both in the Championship. However, that's going to be the last season for now, because Carlisle's got themselves relegated again. 22nd place, Anthony Ryan got themselves promoted. Now they are relegated. Now, the best player is Ryan Williamson, the goalkeeper. Thomas Moore is still there. He scored 12 goals this season, which is the most. That's not great, is it? That might be their trouble right now, is finding a good goalkeeper. But they did spend 1.5 million. However, they sold Grant Frame to Crystal Palace. So he was one of the players that was in and around their team there. He was a very good winger or midfielder that was playing for them. Does look quite good too. So that's where they might be struggling going forward, is they're having to keep selling their best players before they can get the best out of them, I guess. But we've got a new crop, and we've got a future generational talent in Kyle Glenn. So this is one we need to look out for. Kyle Glenn, 164 current ability, potential ability, not very good current ability. Let's hope that they can make the most out of Kyle Glenn, because for now, he's got a 2-year deal on his contract. Bring him in, make the most out of him, sign him on a new deal. Boston has survived, though. Boston have got themselves a nice little secure position in the championship in mid-table. They spent £47 million to stay in the mid-table. £23 million, a record signing for Sefa, who's come in. Don't recognise his name. He's not like a former... No, he's not a former player of Carlisle. From North Macedonia is a new gen, though. For a good centre-back option there, 6'6", massive player. And £5 million on Ollie Scarles from Cardiff. So they are spending big. £5 million on Donnelly. They've got another guy there for 4.5, 2.8. So they're spending quite a lot of money to still just not exactly making the most out of it to get themselves in the Premier League. Who's going to be first in the Premier League? It's got to be Boston, right? Okay, the year is 2040. We've jumped another 5 seasons, which means we are now 15 years into this experiment, and Carlisle have only just got promoted back to the Championship. Very mediocre time in terms of where they've been. They are the purple team here. They have just stayed in and around that sort of top half of League One, but they've just finished in second place to get themselves promoted back into the Championship. They sold £5 million worth of players this season. Last season was 1.3, but they're spending more. £14 million the season before that. They had a few players who have unfortunately left the club, but none that much before, unfortunately, until £12 million, which was Grant Frame, which we already knew about anyway. So, in terms of the players that they currently have, Carlisle, they've got obviously a few players in their under-18s, which were quite good when we last looked 5 years ago, but this season, not so much. And again, if we're looking at their facilities that they have, they're still one of the best youth academies in the world. It has dropped off a little bit, youth recruitment down to 16, but it's still one of the highest in the country. 18 for youth facilities, 19 for youth coaching. And they're doing all right in terms of like finances. They're financially stable because they're allowed to just sell players whenever they need to, who are quite good. But in their first team, they still have Carl Glenn. And that's quite good considering we mentioned 5 years ago that he could be one of the best players. They just never really used him. He only come off the bench 12 times this season. He's not really considered one of their better players. He's down there sort of like 14 players in. But their best players, they are sort of like using a lot of players that Owen Service, did they buy him? No, he's come through the youth teams. They are using some academy players, just not really making the most out of the ones that could be amazing for them. Well, they're in the Championship now, so we'll see how they do. Speaking of the Championship, Boston, they are still there. Boston are still there, and they're still in and around that mid-table sort of area. The club history you can see, so Boston, we're looking at the purple team, all over, just in that sort of... They got one season where they were quite good, and that's basically it. Outside of that, not so much. They're spending a lot of money every single season. £32 million this season alone. Frangoski was their best player there. They brought in £31 million the season before, but they sold 21. £88 million the season before that. Huge amounts on a few players here, so they are spending big money, and they just have not got themselves promoted yet. What about the finances? So financially, under £500 million now. So they have now spent £550 million, and they've only got a transfer budget of 90, but they're not spending anywhere near that anyway. But now they've got to contend with Carlisle back in the Championship. Another 5 years then, and we are now only 5 years away from having the full 25-year experiment over. And these teams are still in the Championship. Carlisle, though, did make the playoffs this season. They are finishing slightly higher than Boston, who are down in 18th place. Boston have just not made the most out of it. They spent another £17 million here, but sold £24 million. And every season you can see, it's either they're spending just double the amount or selling just the double amount. I mean, £16 million they're hardly selling anything there, so they are still kind of overspending more than what they're selling. But there's another season there where they spent pretty much the same, and £71 million was one that we've seen. So yeah, they're not making the most out of the money at all. Whether they're, I mean, it's the AI controlling it is obviously going to be a little bit more difficult for them to identify better players. They're just not really making the most out of the money that they've had. You can see they still got Bojan, who they spent quite a lot of money on. They've just never really done anything with the players that they have brought in. Whereas, to be honest, Carlisle, they've done considerably better with the fact that they haven't had the money and still been selling their best players. £30 million has gone out of the club this season alone, Kyle Glenn's final year. We mentioned Kyle Glenn when he came in, 15 years old. 10 seasons later, and they've made a good profit out of him, really. £24 million. He had a couple of loan spells. They finally got him into the first team, made the most out of him. He's not the best player in the world, but they got a good amount of money for him. So Kyle Glenn has left the club, and they spent £8 million in bringing other players in, including a Boston player there. So they actually spent £5 million on a Boston player. So let's take a look then at the transfer windows as they've gone through. So £3 million out, £5 million out. Not a lot of money going out. They managed to keep hold of their players. Maybe they're just not using them enough. If they were using them, they might see the huge benefits from it. They've got this guy here, MTAC. Did he come through the youth academy? So he didn't. So they're still like their best players. They're not coming through their youth academy. If we look at the potential, the highest potential, we've got this guy here who they are giving game time to, but he's an older man. He's an older player. He's not come through their youth academy. He had a high potential of 169. They've got another player here who's only on loan. They got a couple of players who definitely haven't come from their youth academy. They're struggling, really. They are really struggling to utilize the youth facilities that they have been given, the generosity that we gave them at the start. They've still got some good players in their youth team. They've got Alex Yoff here, who looks quite good, 146. Can they get into the Premier League, though? One of them, at the very least, get into the Premier League. They've got 5 seasons to do it. There's late drama. I don't believe it. There's late drama. Because in 2049, with just 1 season remaining after this season, Carlisle have got promoted from the Championship. Now, Boston were flirting with it. If we're going back a season, Boston finished in the playoffs. Carlisle just missed out on the final day of the playoffs. You can see the little red arrow there, which indicates on the final day they dropped down a position, which would have been 6th to 7th. Obviously, playoff position, not playoff position. But on the final season, after Boston's failure to get promotion, Carlisle do get promoted through the playoffs, finishing in 4th place. Boston this time in 7th place. Nowhere near actually finishing in 6th, but Carlisle is the first team to get to the Premier League, and it took 24 seasons to do it. Unbelievably. Now, they're under 18s. There's no players in there. So let's go straight to their senior squad and see the team that they have done it with. Their best player is still that Natamak, which, yeah, I don't know. But there's this guy here who has 160 potential ability. He looks phenomenal, by the way. He didn't come through their youth team either. He was a free transfer. So they're just doing well off the back of selling a few players and building a team around it. They've just been smarter with it. They've signed £8 million worth of players. They've sold quite a lot. And I think, £24 million there. Owen Service went for £9 million, £8 million there for Thurston. Is that youngsters? No. Oh, they've done well to sell that player for that amount of money, to be honest, haven't they? That's very good. £24 million for Adam Thurston. Again, 29-year-old. Was he a player? He went to Boston, funny enough, but no, he wasn't. I can't really put it down to the fact that they've had some youngsters to get them into the Championship. I feel like it got them to a certain point and then just laid a foundation. And then anything from sort of the last 10 years has just been off the back of just good management. Boston, of course, who had the money the whole time, have just not spent it very well. So in our final season, we're going to see how they do in the Premier League. But Boston, who have had the money the whole time, what are we looking at in terms of their money this final year? So the finances that they've got, £200 million, no rich benefactor. So they've lost the rich benefactor now. He is gone. They still got a £100 million transfer budget, which is fantastic, to say the least. Now, let's have a look then. If we're going off of the club history, well, let's do that. So club history, landmarks, we can see how long the guy stayed along for. So finances, because I haven't really checked this, to be honest. So this was almost 10 years ago. The really rich owner left. They've had money for a long time, obviously, just off the back of this guy just taking it over and just done well. They were given a lot of financial fair play regulations, they could have got promoted, but obviously just cost them, because that's something that we haven't been able to check. Normally it would say when you go on to like a league, if a club has been demoted a certain amount of points, whatever, but it just doesn't say that. That could have happened. We just don't know. But Carlisle, 1 season in there in the Premier League, they're the first ones to do it. I really thought this would go the other way. I thought Boston would be the early front runners. Carlisle would sort of catch up, and maybe depending on how well they manage to keep hold of the players, they might manage to get into the Premier League as well. I thought for sure the money would be the one that would get Boston into the Premier League quite early. Doesn't look that way. Final season then, and it's not a good sign when you see the jobs available. Carlisle are one of them, the vacant jobs available. So let's have a look then. Premier League, they finished bottom, 31 points. Wolves finished bottom with 22 points. They've done all right there. They still had to sack their manager, unfortunately. They haven't had a great season. If they managed to pull off any miracles there, it looks like they just drew against Manchester United at Carlisle. So yeah, not a lot of wins, unfortunately. Just beating a few teams around them, and that's it. They had a good period there. The start of their season was very good. They beat Spurs in their first away fixture. They drew to Everton in their first home fixture. They've done all right there. They beat Sheffield United. They were doing very well. They weren't beaten until they faced Wrexham in the 13th of September. So that's quite unfortunate. But unfortunately for them now, yeah, £47 million was spent. They brought in £25 million goalkeeper. Might be the reason why they got themselves relegated, if they're spending all their money basically on a goalkeeper, because the rest of the team kind of needed some work as well. £4 million on a decent striker there from Brazil. He got 10 goals. But they didn't sell any players. It's a shame, isn't it? It's a shame that they haven't managed to keep hold of some of their better ones. The ones that they come up with from the championship, they still kept hold of and done quite well there. That Bajbir is done quite well in terms of that. But yeah, never really managed to get a full-fledged youth academy prospect who was like an elite talent to their full potential. That's kind of a shame, really. Mismanagement. Speaking of mismanagement, Boston. Where did they finish in their championship season? The last one, 14th place. They spent another 19 million, but they sold 28, selling the likes of Barry Webb and Falchi. They brought in Mark Dank, from Leeds as their best player this season. Boston, what happened? So terrible. Very, very bad from Boston, but Carlisle are the winners of this little experiment in terms of money or youth. £1 billion or the perfect youth recruitment. Perfect youth recruitment has won this one. Let me know your thoughts or any other experiments you want to see down below. And of course, make sure you're subscribed. On screen right now is another challenge that I took on where I tried to win the Champions League with only defenders. It's a lot of fun and not a lot of people's watched it, but go check it out. I think it's a great video.